When Deathworld documentation became a casual chat, the lecture hall at Nexus University hummed with nervous energy as students from across the galaxy settled into their seats. The air recycling system worked overtime to accommodate the different atmospheric needs of each species, creating a gentle symphony of whispers and mechanical adjustments. Dr. Zaravex, her scaled green skin gleaming under the artificial lights, stood at the front of the room with the confidence of someone who had spent decades studying the galaxy's most dangerous creatures. Her vertical pupils swept across the diverse classroom, taking in the familiar faces of her advanced xenobiology students. Cliques floated near the ceiling, their translucent energy form pulsing with anticipation. Thorn sat in the specially designed crystal formation chair, all 6 arms poised to take notes. Veltar represented the entire hive mind of their species, their compound eyes reflecting the holographic displays that surrounded the room. Today we examine something unprecedented, Dr. Vex announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had documented creatures that gave nightmares to entire star systems. A world so hostile, so completely deadly, that our xenobiological classification system had to create an entirely new category. She paused for effect, her clawed fingers dancing across the holographic controls. The room darkened, and suddenly they were all staring at a blue and green sphere rotating slowly in the center of the room. Terra, she said, the word carrying. Wait like a curse. What the inhabitants call Earth, a Class X death world, where every single ecosystem is designed to kill. Clix's energy form flickered with concern. Professor, are you certain it's safe to study such a place? Safe? Dr. Vex's laugh was sharp and reptilian. There is nothing safe about this world. The very air burns with corrosive oxygen. The surface. Water is a universal solvent. The gravity would crush most civilized species, and the creatures, ... double quotes. She shuddered visibly. The creatures are the stuff of nightmares. The hologram shifted, showing vast forests and mountains. But the most fascinating aspect is that this world produced an intelligent species. Somehow, impossibly, thinking beings evolved in this hellscape, and not only survived, but thrived. From the back of the room came a cheerful voice. Oh hey, that's home. Every head turned to see Marcus Chen, the exchange student from the very world they were discussing. He had arrived late, as usual, carrying a backpack that seemed to contain everything he owned, and a coffee cup that never seemed too empty. His dark hair was slightly messy, and he wore the kind of casual clothes that suggested he had never met a formal dress code he couldn't ignore. Mr. Chen, Dr. Vex said, her tone carefully neutral. How fortunate that you could join us. We're just beginning our examination of your world's apex predators. Marcus grinned and settled into his seat, somehow managing to knock over thorns. Water container in the process? Apex predators? Cool. Are we talking about the big cats or the bears? Oh, or maybe the wolves. Those guys are awesome. The casual enthusiasm in his voice made the entire class exchange worried glances. Veltar's compound eyes clicked nervously. We shall begin with the ursine species, Dr. Vex announced, calling up a holographic display that made half the class immediately lean back in their chairs. The creature that appeared was massive, covered in thick brown fur with claws that gleamed like daggers. It reared up on its hind legs, displaying teeth that belonged in a horror story. The hologram was accompanied by scrolling text displaying its capabilities: 600 pounds of muscle, 35 miles per hour running speed, bite force capable of crushing bone. The North American grizzly bear, Dr. Vex intoned, a solitary apex predator capable of killing prey many times its size. They are territorial, aggressive, and have been known to hunt humans for food. Oh, that's Big Ben, Marcus exclaimed, leaning forward with genuine delight. Well, not that exact bear, obviously. But we had a grizzly just like that near our cabin when I was growing up in Yellowstone. He used to come by every summer looking for berries. The silence that followed was so complete that even the air recycling system seemed to hold its breath. You ... you named it, Thorn asked, his crystalline voice chiming with disbelief. Well, yeah. Can't just keep calling him that bear, right? Big Ben was pretty chill once you got to know him. Mom used to leave him apples sometimes, though Dad always said we shouldn't encourage him. Ben had this thing about our garbage cans that was just... Marcus chuckled. You had to respect his determination. Dr. Vex's scales rippled with what could only be described as academic distress. Mr. Chen, this creature is classified as an apex predator. It could easily kill a human. I mean, sure, if you did something really stupid. But mostly they just want to be left alone to do bear things. Fish, eat berries, take naps. Ben was actually pretty good at avoiding us once we figured out his schedule. The hologram shifted to show a pack of wolves moving through snow with predatory grace. Their eyes gleamed with intelligence and hunger, and their coordinated movement spoke of a hunting efficiency that had been perfected over millions of years. The gray wolf, Dr. Vex continued, though her voice was becoming slightly strained. Pack hunters with complex social structures capable of taking down prey much larger than themselves through coordinated attacks. Oh, wolves. Marcus's face lit up. These guys are incredible. Did you know they have this amazing family structure? The alpha pair leads the pack, but it's not about dominance like people used to think. It's more like, well, like parents. Taking care of their kids. Clix's energy form pulsed with confusion. You speak of them as if they are familiar. Well, kind of. I worked as a park ranger for a few years before coming here. Learn to track the local packs, make sure they're healthy, monitor their territories. There was this one pack we called the Riverside Pack. The alpha female, Luna, was this gorgeous silver wolf who was just incredibly smart. She figured out the human patrol schedules and would keep her pack away from the hiking trails during busy times. The class was staring at Marcus as if he had just casually mentioned having tea with supernovas. You tracked them? Dor asked, their hive-mind voice carrying the collective bewilderment of their entire species. Sure, it's part of wildlife management. You need to know where they are, how many there are, whether they're healthy. Plus, it helps prevent conflicts with campers and hikers. Most people don't realize that wolves are actually pretty shy around humans. They'll avoid us if they can. Dr. Vex's claws clicked against the holographic controls with increasing agitation. The display changed to show a massive feline creature with golden fur and a dark mane. Its eyes held the predatory intelligence of a creature that had never known fear. The African lion, she announced, her voice carrying a note of desperation. Social predators that hunt in coordinated groups capable of taking down prey weighing over a ton, Simba. Marcus grinned. Okay, not actually Simba, but you get the idea. And lions are fascinating. The females do most of the hunting, but the males are basically there for protection and looking impressive. It's kind of like my dad at family barbecues. The comparison between an apex predator and a family barbecue seemed to break something in Thorne's crystalline mind. He made a sound like wind chimes. In a hurricane? Mr. Chen, Dr. Vex said, her voice now carrying the careful tone of someone trying to determine if their student was insane. Are you telling me that you have personal experience with these creatures? Well, not personal. I mean, I've seen them in the wild, but mostly in Africa, and that was more of a safari situation. Though there was this one time in Kenya when our jeep broke down about a mile from a pride. The hologram flickered and changed to show something that made the entire class collectively recoil. 8 legs, multiple eyes, and fangs that dripped with venom. The creature hung in what appeared to be a corner, waiting with the patience of something that had turned waiting into an art form. The Australian funnel web spider, Dr. Vex announced weakly. One of Terra's most venomous arachnids. A single bite can kill a human in minutes. Marcus squinted at the display. Oh man, is that a Sydney funnel web? Those guys are grumpy. Had one living in our garage when I was about 10. Mom kept saying she'd call pest control, but I kind of got attached to him, named him Frank. The silence that followed was the kind usually reserved for moments right before explosions or the heat death of the universe. ... You had one of these as a pet, Clix managed to ask, their energy form flickering with what could only be described as existential crisis. Not exactly a pet, more like a roommate who didn't pay rent. Frank was actually pretty useful. Kept the garage free of flies and mosquitoes. We had this understanding where I'd leave him alone and he'd leave me alone. It worked out great until Mom finally found him. What happened then? Beltar asked, though their collective consciousness seemed to already be dreading the answer. Oh, she screamed loud enough to wake the neighbors, grabbed a broom, and chased poor Frank around the garage for about 10 minutes. I felt really bad for him. Eventually, Dad caught him in a jar and relocated him to the backyard. Dr. Vex was now making sounds that are species typically reserved for impending molting cycles or the end of the world. Mr. Chen, you do understand that these creatures are classified as apex predators, specifically because they can kill humans? Marcus scratched his head, which seemed to be a human gesture for thinking. Well, yeah, but that's only if you corner them or do something threatening. Most of the time, they're just trying to live their lives. Frank wasn't under our workbench because he wanted to murder me. He was there because it was dark and quiet and had good hiding spots. The holograms cycled through more creatures. A massive python coiled around a tree branch, saltwater crocodile that looked like it had been designed by nightmares, a polar bear that seemed to be made of pure Arctic death. To each one, Marcus responded with the casual familiarity of someone discussing old neighbors. The python reminded him of his uncle's pet snake. The crocodile brought up memories of a nature documentary he'd watched while eating cereal. The polar bear made him think about a zoo visit, where he'd been impressed by how the animal had adapted to its environment. By the time the display showed a great white shark cutting through ocean water with predatory grace, most of the class was beginning to question their understanding of the universe. The great white shark, Dr. Vex said, though she was starting to sound less like an educator and more like someone trying to convince herself that reality still made sense. Apex predator of Terra's oceans. Rows of razor-sharp teeth, incredible. Speed and a bite force that can cut through bone. Bruce, Marcus exclaimed. Well, not that exact shark, but we called all great whites Bruce after that old movie. I went cage diving with these guys off the coast of South Africa a few years back. Absolutely incredible experience. Every alien eye in the room focused on Marcus with the intensity of scanning equipment. You went swimming with him, Dorn? Asked, his voice cracking like stressed crystal. Well, not swimming exactly. We were in a protective cage, but you could see how amazing they are up close. They're not mindless killing machines like people think. They're curious, intelligent, and actually pretty cautious around humans. Most shark attacks are cases of mistaken identity, Dr. Vex shut off the holographic display with a gesture that suggested she was surrendering to forces beyond her control. The sudden return to normal lighting made everyone blink, except Marcus, who just looked around with the confused expression of someone who had missed an important memo. Mr. Chen, Dr. Vex said, her voice carrying the careful control of someone trying very hard not to lose what remained of her sanity. I need you to explain something to me. Sure, Professor. What's up? These creatures we have just observed represent some of the most efficient killing machines in known space. They are studied across the galaxy as examples of evolutionary perfection in the art of predation. She paused, her vertical pupils fixed on Marcus. And you were telling me that you lived with them? Marcus looked genuinely puzzled by the question. Well, not with them exactly. More like in the same neighborhood. I mean, Earth is pretty big. There's room for everybody if you know how to coexist. Coexist, Dr. Vex repeated slowly, as if the word was foreign to her. Yeah, like you learn. The rules, you know? Don't get between a mother bear and her cubs. Don't corner a snake. Stay calm around big cats. Make noise when you're hiking in wolf territory so you don't surprise them. Basic stuff. The class exchanged glances that suggested they were all having the same thought. There was nothing basic about any of this. You speak as if you have studied their behavior patterns, Dr. Vex observed. I mean, you kind of have to if you're going to share the planet with them. Plus, biology was my major in college. I specialized in wildlife conservation. Conservation? Clix's energy form pulsed with confusion. You mean preservation? Yeah. Protecting them from us? Mostly. Humans are. We're pretty good at the whole survival thing. It's maybe too good sometimes. We've learned that we need to be really careful about our impact on other species. There was a pause as this information sank in. Then Veltar asked the question that was clearly on everyone's mind. What do you mean by too good? For the first time since he'd entered the classroom, Marcus seemed to really consider his words. His casual demeanor shifted slightly, and something more serious flickered behind his eyes. Well, humans are adaptable. We can survive in almost any environment. We're tool users, problem solvers, and we're really good at working together when we need to. We're also persistence hunters, which means we can literally chase something until it dies of exhaustion. He paused, looking around at the increasingly concerned faces of his classmates. We're really good at eliminating threats. When humans decide something needs to be gone, it usually ends up gone. We've accidentally driven species extinct just by expanding our territory. When we actually try to eliminate something, Marcus shrugged. Let's just say there's a reason we work so hard on conservation now. The classroom fell silent, except for the gentle hum of the air recycling system. Even that seemed quieter than usual. Dr. Vex's scales had shifted to a pale green color that suggested deep concern. Mr. Chen, are you telling me that humans are more dangerous than the apex predators we just observed? Marcus nodded slowly. Oh, absolutely. I mean, those guys are incredible at what they do, but they're specialized. Humans are generalists. We adapt, we learn, we innovate. We've been the dominant species on Earth for thousands of years, and we've gotten very good at staying that way. The implications of this statement settled over the room like a heavy blanket. These alien students had just spent an hour being terrified by Earth's apex predators, only to discover that the real apex predator had been sitting in the back row, the entire time cheerfully reminiscing about his childhood neighbors. But here's the thing, Marcus continued, his voice taking on a more earnest tone. Being good at survival doesn't mean you have to be good at destroying everything else. Humans figured out a long time ago that cooperation is more interesting than domination. He gestured around the room. That's why I'm here, right? Instead of conquering the galaxy, we're joining it. We're learning from you guys, sharing what we know, working together to make things better. The class bell chimed, its electronic melody cutting through the atmosphere of existential contemplation. Marcus immediately started packing his backpack. With the same chaotic energy he'd brought to everything else. Same time next week? He asked cheerfully, somehow managing to knock over his coffee cup in the process. As Marcus left the classroom, the remaining students sat in stunned silence. Dr. Vex stood at the front of the room, her teaching notes scattered and forgotten, trying to process what had just happened. Professor Clix finally asked, their energy formed dim with confusion. Are all humans like that? Dr. Vex considered the question carefully. I'm beginning to suspect that Marcus Chen may actually be one of the more typical examples of his species. Statement caused Thorne to emit a sound like crystal wind chimes in a tornado. However, Dr. Vex continued, pulling herself together with visible effort. I think we can conclude that humans have evolved beyond their predatory instincts towards something more collaborative. She looked around at her students, seeing the mixture of terror and fascination in their eyes. Class dismissed. I need to make some calls to the xenobiology department. It appears our understanding of Terra's apex predator was incomplete. As the students filed out, each lost in their own thoughts about sharing a galaxy with friendly apex predators, Dr. Vex made a note on her holographic display. Urgent. Revise all documentation on human species. Previous classifications inadequate. Request immediate consultation with Xenopsychology Department. Outside in the hallway, Marcus was already chatting with students from his quantum mechanics class, apparently oblivious to the fact that his xenobiology classmates were now spreading word throughout the university that humans were basically the galaxy's most terrifying predators. Disguised as enthusiastic exchange students, the story of Marcus Chen and his casual relationship with Deathworld, apex predators would become legend at Nexus University, but not for the reasons anyone expected. The test that revealed Earth's true apex predator word spread through Nexus University faster than quantum entanglement. By the next morning, everyone from the first-year atmospheric studies students to the advanced stellar engineering professors had heard about the human who casually discussed apex predators like they were neighborhood pets. The campus buzzed with speculation, fear, and morbid curiosity. Dr. Zara Vex found herself at the center of it all, fielding calls from colleagues across the galaxy who wanted to know if the reports were true. Had a human really named a venomous spider Did he actually go swimming with creatures that could bite through starship hulls? It has to be exaggeration, insisted Dr. Krex, the head of the xenopsychology department, his 3 heads bobbing with conviction. No species could survive direct contact with Terra's apex predators. The human is either lying or suffering from severe memory distortion. But Dr. Vex had seen the casual confidence in Marcus Chen's eyes, the way he spoke about these creatures without any trace of fear or boastfulness. There was something authentic about his stories that made her reptilian instincts prickle with unease. That's when she had an idea that would either prove Marcus was a fraud or reveal something about humans that would change everything. The Nexus. University Survival Training Complex was normally used for emergency preparedness courses and military training exercises. The massive holographic chamber could simulate any environment in the known galaxy, from the methane storms of Titan 7 to the crushing depths of the Mariana Nebula. Dr. Vex had reserved the chamber for what she called an educational demonstration. She had invited not just her xenobiology class, but colleagues from across the university. The viewing gallery was packed with beings from dozens of species, all eager to see if the human could back up his incredible claims. Marcus arrived 20 minutes late, carrying his usual backpack and a fresh cup of coffee. He looked around at the assembled crowd with surprise. Wow, this is a lot of people. Are we having some kind of special presentation? You could say that, Dr. Vex replied, her scales rippling with academic anticipation. Mr. Chen, you've made some rather extraordinary claims about human survival. Capabilities. Today, we're going to test them. She gestured toward the holographic chamber, which hummed with power. This simulation system can recreate any environment with perfect accuracy. I propose we put your survival skills to the test. What? Shrugged. Sure. Sounds fun. What did you have in mind? Dr. Vex's smile revealed rows of sharp teeth. I've programmed several scenarios based on encounters with the apex predators we discussed. If humans really coexist with these creatures as you claim, you should be able to survive simulated encounters. The crowd in the viewing gallery pressed forward, eager to see what would happen. Clix's energy form was practically vibrating with excitement. Thorn had all 6 arms poised to take notes. Veltar's compound eyes reflected the holographic displays as their entire hive mind focused on the proceedings. Okay, Marcus said, setting down his coffee and stretching. But just so we're clear, I'm not going to try to fight anything, right? That would be stupid and dangerous. Of course not, Dr. Vex assured him. The scenarios are designed to test survival and coexistence, not combat. Marcus nodded and stepped into the chamber. The walls shimmered, and suddenly he was standing in a dense forest. Towering trees stretched overhead, their branches filtering sunlight into dappled patterns. The air was thick with the scent of pine and earth. North American temperate forest, Dr. Vex announced to the gallery. Now initiating. Scenario 1. The sound came first, a deep, rumbling growl that seemed to vibrate through the very ground. Then a massive grizzly bear emerged from behind a cluster of trees, its brown fur rippling with muscle. The holographic creature was perfect in every detail, from its black nose to its razor-sharp claws. The bear spotted Marcus and rose up on its hind legs, standing nearly 8 feet tall. It huffed and made a sound that was part roar, part warning. The viewing gallery held its collective breath. Marcus looked up at the bear calmly, then slowly backed away at an angle, not making direct eye contact. He raised his arms slightly to make himself appear larger, but kept his movements slow and deliberate. "Hey there, big guy," he said in a calm, low voice. "I'm not here to cause trouble, just passing through." The bear dropped back to all fours, huffed again, and then shambled away through the trees, apparently deciding the strange bipedal creature wasn't worth the effort. Scenario 1 complete, Dr. Vex announced, though her voice carried a note of disappointment. The humans successfully avoided conflict through submissive behavior. Submissive? Marcus called out, brushing leaves off his shirt. I wasn't being submissive. I was being respectful. That bear was just checking me out, making sure I wasn't a threat. Once he figured out I wasn't interested in his territory, he went about his business. Forest faded, replaced by African savanna. The grass was golden in the late afternoon light, and acacia trees dotted the landscape. In the distance, a pride of lions was resting in the shade. Scenario 2, Dr. Vex announced. Direct encounter with a hunting pride. The lions had noticed. Marcus, the females were already spreading out, their predatory instincts engaged. The male lion rose to his feet, his mane magnificent in the sunlight. Marcus assessed the situation quickly. He was too far from any climbable trees, and running would only trigger their chase response. Instead, he did something that made the entire viewing gallery gasp. He sat down, not collapsed, not cowered, but deliberately sat cross-legged on the ground, making himself smaller and less threatening. He avoided eye contact with the lions, but kept them in his peripheral vision. "Come on," whispered Dr. Krex from the gallery. "They're going to tear him apart." Ash! But the lions seemed confused by this behavior. The females approached cautiously, their hunting formation breaking apart as they tried to figure out what this strange creature was doing. The male lion approached to within about 20 feet, then stopped. For several long minutes, human and lions regarded each other. Then, apparently deciding that Marcus wasn't prey, predator, or threat, the pride settled back into their resting spot. Scenario 2 complete, Dr. Vex said weakly. A human successfully employed. Non-aggressive posturing. Savannah dissolved. Replaced by a coastal scene, waves crashed against rocky shores, and the air was filled with the smell of salt and seaweed. A great white shark cruised just offshore, its dorsal fin cutting through the water. Scenario 3, Dr. Vex announced. Marine environment encounter. Marcus looked at the shark, then at the water, then back at the shark. "This one's tricky," he said. Sharks are curious, but they don't see very well. Movement and splashing can trigger investigation behavior. He waded into the water slowly, moving with smooth, deliberate motions. When the shark turned toward him, Marcus positioned himself vertically in the water, making himself appear less like a seal and more like a piece of floating debris. The shark approached, circled once, then lost interest, and swam away. "The human demonstrates knowledge of predator psychology," Dr. Vex observed, though she was starting to sound less like a skeptical professor and more like someone taking notes on a phenomenon she didn't understand. The scenarios continued. A. Venomous snake encounter where Marcus simply stepped aside and gave the creature space to pass. A wolf pack situation where he made himself known from a distance, allowing the wolves to acknowledge his presence and decide he wasn't a threat. A spider encounter where he simply observed the creature from a respectful distance. Each time, Marcus's approach was the same: awareness, respect, and intelligent avoidance of conflict. But it was the final scenario that truly revealed the nature of humanity's relationship with these apex predators. The holographic chamber became a winter landscape. Snow fell gently through pine trees, and the air was crisp and cold. In the distance, a pack of wolves was hunting, their breath visible in the frigid air, but this scenario was different. One of the wolves was limping, clearly injured. The pack was struggling to keep up with their wounded member. Marcus watched for a moment, then did something that made the entire viewing gallery fall silent. He approached the wolves, not aggressively, not threateningly, but with the calm confidence of someone who understood exactly what he was doing. He called out to them from a distance, alerting them to his presence. The pack turned to watch him, their ears forward, alert but not alarmed. Marcus had something in his hand, a small medical kit that had materialized from the simulation system. He set it down between himself and the wolves, then backed away. Pack approached cautiously. The alpha sniffed the kit, then looked at Marcus with what could only be described as understanding. "What is he doing?" Clicks whispered from the gallery. "He's helping them," Dr. Vex said, her voice filled with wonder. "The human is providing medical aid to apex predators." The scenario played out with the wolves cautiously accepting the medical supplies. It was a scene that defied everything the assembled aliens thought they knew about predator-prey relationships. Marcus exited the chamber to thunderous silence. The viewing gallery was packed with beings from across the galaxy, all staring. at him with expressions ranging from awe to terror. "That was fun," Marcus said, retrieving his coffee, though I should mention that most of those scenarios wouldn't happen in real life. Animals usually avoid humans unless they're protecting territory or young. Dr. Vex descended from the gallery, her scales shifting through colors that suggested deep thought. "Mr. Chen, what we just witnessed was unprecedented. You didn't just survive encounters with apex predators. You demonstrated a level of interspecies understanding that our behavioral models can't account for." Marcus looked puzzled. "It's not that complicated. Animals are just trying to survive, same as us. Most of the time, conflict happens because of misunderstanding or desperation. If you know how to communicate that you're not a threat, most creatures will leave you alone." "But the final scenario," Dr. Krex interrupted, his three heads bobbing. "With excitement, you provided aid to potential predators. That suggests a level of cooperation that's what humans do," Marcus said simply. "We take care of things. It's kind of our thing." The implications of this statement rippled through the assembled crowd. Dr. Vex felt her understanding of humanity shifting like tectonic plates. "Mr. Chen," she said slowly, "I need to ask you something important. In all these scenarios, you demonstrated remarkable knowledge of predator behavior. But you also showed something else, a complete lack of fear. How is that possible?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "I guess because I don't see them as monsters. They're just animals trying to live their lives. Sure, they can be dangerous if you're stupid about it, but so can a lot of things. Cars are dangerous. Electricity is dangerous. We don't live in terror of them. We learn how to interact with them safely." He paused, looking around at the crowd of aliens who were hanging on his every word. "The thing is, humans aren't really afraid of these creatures because we're not their prey. We haven't been prey for a very long time. He searched for the right words. We're more like ... colleagues, I guess. We all live on the same planet. We all have to share the same resources. We've learned to coexist." "But surely some humans are afraid of these creatures," Veltar observed, their hive mind voice carrying collective confusion. "Oh, absolutely," Marcus agreed. "Lots of people are terrified of snakes or spiders or sharks. But that's usually because they don't understand them. Fear comes from the unknown. When you study something, when you understand how it works, it's not scary anymore. It's just ... part of the world." Dr. Vex was furiously taking notes on her holographic display. "Mr. Chen, you keep referring to these apex predators as if they're equals. But humans are clearly the dominant species on Terra. How did that happen?" Marcus's expression grew more serious. "That's a good question, I guess. Humans got really good at working together. We developed tools, language, complex societies. We learned to adapt to different environments instead of being limited to one ecological niche." He was quiet for a moment. And when he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that hadn't been there before. "But here's the thing that's really important to understand. Humans didn't become the dominant species by being the biggest or strongest or most venomous. We became dominant by being persistent, adaptable, and cooperative. We're endurance hunters. We can track prey for days, weeks if necessary. We don't give up." The viewing gallery had gone completely silent. Even the air recycling systems seemed to be holding their breath. When humans decide something needs to happen, it happens. When we decide something is a threat that needs to be eliminated. Marcus paused, choosing his words carefully. "Well, let's just say that most of the really dangerous megafauna on Earth went extinct around the same time humans started spreading across the planet." Dr. Vex's scales had shifted to a pale, almost white color. "Are you saying that humans hunted these apex predators to extinction?" "Some of them, yeah. Saber-toothed cats, cave bears, giant wolves. Anything that saw humans as prey got selected out of the gene pool pretty quickly. Animals that survived were the ones that learned to avoid us, or better yet, work with us." The implications of this revelation hit the assembled aliens like a shockwave. They had spent the last hour watching Marcus peacefully coexist with apex predators, not realizing that those were the survivors of a much larger extinction event. "But that raises an even more important question," Marcus continued. "What do you do when you become so good at eliminating threats that you become the biggest threat to everything else?" He looked around at the crowd of alien faces, all focused on him with laser intensity. You learn to choose, learn to be careful. With your power? You learn that just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Dr. Krex leaned forward, all three of his heads focused on Marcus. You're saying humans voluntarily limited their own expansion, in a way? Yeah. We realized that if we kept going the way we were going, we'd eventually run out of planet. So we started conservation programs, protected habitats, breeding programs for endangered species. We learned to share. Marcus gestured toward the holographic chamber where the scenarios had played out. Those animals I interacted with exist today because humans decided they should exist. We could have eliminated all of them. We had. The technology, the numbers, the determination. But we chose not to. We chose to be neighbors instead of conquerors. The viewing gallery erupted in whispered conversations as beings from across the galaxy tried to process this information. Dr. Vex found herself staring at Marcus with a mixture of fascination and horror. Mr. Chen, she said slowly, are you telling me that every apex predator on Terra exists only because humanity allows it to exist? Marcus nodded. Pretty much. But it's not like we're holding them hostage or anything. It's more like we're all part of the same ecosystem now. We take care of each other. He pulled out his holographic display and called up a series of images. The gallery gasped as they saw humans working alongside the very creatures they had just been afraid of. These are wildlife researchers, Marcus explained, showing images of humans tracking wolves with radio collars. They monitor pack behavior, health, territory disputes. This helps us manage human activities to minimize conflicts. The next image showed humans working with great white sharks, tagging them for research. Marine biologists studying shark migration patterns. The data helps us predict where they'll be, so we can warn swimmers and surfers. More images followed. Humans relocating bears away from populated areas. Humans breeding programs for endangered big cats. Humans working to restore habitats for apex predators. You see, Marcus said, when you become the apex predator, you become responsible for everything else. It's not enough to just survive anymore. To make sure everything else can survive too. Clicks. Energy form pulsed with confusion. But why? Why would the dominant species care about preserving potential threats? Marcus smiled, because they're not threats anymore. They're part of the world we live in. And a world without wolves, without sharks, without bears, that's not a world worth living in. He paused, looking thoughtful. Plus, there's something else. Humans learned that cooperation and diversity make us stronger, those apex predators. They keep ecosystems healthy. Wolves control deer populations, which prevents overgrazing. Sharks keep fish populations balanced. Bears spread seeds across vast distances when they travel. The assembled aliens were beginning to understand something. That changed their entire perception of humanity. So humans became apex predators, Dr. Vex said slowly, and then chose to become protectors. Exactly, Marcus said. We learned that true dominance isn't about eliminating everything else. It's about creating a system where everything can thrive. Dr. Krex was furiously taking notes. This explains the cooperation we see in human space exploration. You're applying the same principles to galactic relations. Well, yeah, Marcus said, as if it were obvious. Figured out a long time ago that diversity makes us stronger. Different species, different perspectives, different solutions too. Problems. Why would we want to conquer the galaxy when we could learn from it instead? The viewing gallery buzzed with excited conversations. Beings who had arrived expecting to see a human fail spectacularly at survival had instead witnessed something unprecedented. A demonstration of how an apex predator species could evolve beyond predation into stewardship. Dr. Vex approached Marcus, her academic excitement overriding her earlier skepticism. Mr. Chen, what you've shown us today changes everything we thought we knew about apex predator behavior and evolutionary psychology. Marcus looked confused. Really? It just seems like common sense to me, Dr. Vex said, her scales shimmering. With colors that indicated deep thought, may be the most remarkable thing about humans. What you consider common sense represents an evolutionary leap that most species never achieve. The crowd began to disperse, but the conversations continued. Word of the demonstration would spread throughout the university and beyond, carrying with it a new understanding of humanity's place in the galaxy. As Marcus packed up his things, preparing to leave for his next class, Dr. Vex approached him one final time. "Mr. Chen, I have one last question. In all the scenarios we ran today, you showed knowledge, skill, and confidence. But there was something else, a kind of respect for these creatures that went beyond mere tolerance. Where does that come from?" Marcus thought for a moment. "I guess it comes from understanding that they were here first. Earth belonged to them long before humans came along. We're the newcomers, the immigrants. The least we can do is be good neighbors." He shouldered his backpack and headed toward the exit, then paused and turned back. "Besides," he said with a grin, "they're fascinating creatures. Why would anyone want to live in a universe without wolves and sharks and bears? That would be boring." As Marcus left the survival training complex, the remaining aliens stood in contemplative silence. They had come expecting to expose humans. Exaggerated claims about coexisting with apex predators. Instead, they had discovered that humans had transcended the traditional predator-prey dynamic entirely. Becoming something unprecedented in galactic history, apex predators, who chose to be gardeners of their own ecosystem. Dr. Vex made a final note on her holographic display. "Urgent revision required. Human classification inadequate. Recommend." New category: Apex Stewards. Implications for galactic relations. Profound and positive. The demonstration at Nexus University would be remembered as the day the galaxy learned that Earth's most dangerous predator had chosen to become its most devoted protector. And that choice, more than any display of strength or dominance, would define humanity's role in the greater galactic community. In the end, the test had revealed Earth's true apex predator, not through displays of violence or dominance, but through acts of understanding, cooperation, and care. It was a lesson that would resonate throughout the galaxy for generations to come. Why the galaxy's deadliest species chose friendship over conquest. The news spread through Nexus University like wildfire through dry grass. Within hours of Marcus Chen's demonstration in the survival training complex, every student, professor, and administrator knew the story. The human who casually chatted about apex predators wasn't just familiar with them, represented a species that had transcended them entirely. But with knowledge came fear. Dr. Vex found herself fielding increasingly frantic calls from colleagues. Across the galaxy, university administrators demanded meetings. Several alien students had contacted their home governance, requesting immediate evacuation from what they now perceived as a Deathworld predator's hunting ground. The campus atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Where once students from different species mingled freely in the corridors, now they formed nervous clusters, speaking in hushed tones about the human in their midst. Clix's energy form flickered with anxiety whenever Marcus appeared. Thorns. Crystalline structure developed stress fractures that took hours to heal. Veltar's entire hive mind was in a state of collective unease. Marcus seemed oblivious to the change. He continued arriving late to classes, knocking things over, and chatting cheerfully with anyone who would listen. But fewer beings were willing to listen now. Conversations died when he approached. Study groups mysteriously disbanded when he tried to join them. It was Zixtel, particularly nervous insectoid from the Spiral sector, who finally voiced what everyone was thinking. If humans are the galaxy's apex predators, Zixtel chittered during a break between classes, his mandibles clicking with agitation. What are they really doing here? Why join a galactic community when they could simply conquer it? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Other students nodded in agreement, their various eyes, sensors, and perception organs focused on the problem with laser intensity. Dr. Vex, who had been walking past, stopped and listened to the growing murmur of concerned voices. "They're studying us," whispered Blacks, a gelatinous being from the outer rim. "Learning our weaknesses, our technologies, our defensive capabilities." The perfect infiltration strategy, agreed Vorthok, a crystalline entity whose species communicated, through harmonic resonance, send their least threatening individuals to gather intelligence. But Marcus seems so friendly, protested Neela, a young atmospheric being whose species had never encountered predators of any kind. That's what makes it so terrifying, Zixtal responded. He's a perfect predator disguised as a harmless exchange student. Dr. Vex had heard enough. As the beings who had unwittingly started this panic, she felt responsible for addressing it. She also realized that this was a teaching moment of unprecedented proportions. "Attention, everyone," she called out, her reptilian voice carrying across the corridor. "I think it's time we had a proper discussion about our human colleague." Within an hour, the main lecture hall was packed. Word had spread throughout the university, and beings from every department had come to hear what Dr. Vex had to say about the human situation. The atmosphere was tense, with most students sitting as far from the door as possible, just in case they needed to make a quick escape. Marcus arrived 15 minutes late, carrying his usual coffee and looking around in confusion at the packed auditorium. "Wow, is this some kind of special assembly?" he asked, settling into his usual seat near the front. "Did I miss a memo?" A collective intake of breath from several hundred alien beings created a small atmospheric disturbance. Vex stepped to the podium, her scales shifting through colors that indicated deep thought and careful consideration. "Today," she announced, "we're going to address the concerns that have arisen following yesterday's demonstration, specifically the question of human intentions in joining the Galactic community." Marcus looked even more confused. "Human intentions? I mean, I can only speak for myself. But I'm here to study quantum xenobiology and maybe figure out how to synthesize breathable atmospheres for different species. Is that what you mean?" The casual nature of his response, as if he were discussing the weather rather than potential galactic conquest, only served to heighten the tension in the room. Dr. Vex decided to address the issue directly. "Mr. Chen, my colleagues and students are concerned about humanity's true motivations for space exploration. Given what we've learned about human capabilities, some question whether your species' interest in cooperation is genuine." Marcus blinked, finally beginning to understand the atmosphere in the room. He looked around at the hundreds of alien faces, noting the fear, suspicion, and anxiety written in their various features. "Oh," he said quietly. "To scout for an invasion?" The silence that followed was so complete that the air recycling systems sounded like thunderstorms. Marcus set down his coffee and stood up, usual casual demeanor replaced by something more serious. For the first time since arriving at Nexus University, he looked like someone who was choosing his words very carefully. "I understand why you'd be worried," he began, his voice carrying across the packed auditorium. "Yesterday's demonstration probably made it pretty clear that humans we're really good at the survival thing. And in galactic history, when an apex predator species develops space travel, it usually doesn't end well for everyone else." Several beings in the audience shifted nervously. Marcus had just acknowledged their worst fears. "But here's the thing. You need to understand about humans," Marcus continued. "We've already been through our conquest phase. We've already learned what happens when you try to dominate everything around you." He paused, looking around the room with an expression that mixed sadness with determination. "A few hundred years ago, humans were doing exactly what you're afraid of. We were expanding across Earth, taking whatever we wanted, eliminating anything. That got in our way. We were incredibly good at it." The auditorium was so quiet that individual heartbeats could probably be heard. "We almost destroyed everything," Marcus said simply. "Our planet, our ecosystems, ourselves. We came within a few decades of making Earth uninhabitable." Dr. Vex felt her scales shifting to colors she didn't recognize. This was not the direction she had expected the conversation to take. "But we stopped," Marcus continued. "Not because we had to. We probably could have kept going, found ways to survive in the wasteland we were creating. We stopped because we chose to. We looked around at what we were doing and said, this isn't who we want to be." He began walking slowly around the front of the auditorium, his movements careful and deliberate. "We learned something that most apex predator species never figure out. Being able to destroy everything doesn't mean you should. True strength isn't about eliminating your competition. It's about creating a world where everyone can thrive." Marcus stopped and looked directly at Zixtel, who had been one of the most vocal about human threats. You want to know why humans? Join the galactic community instead of conquering it. Because we've learned that cooperation produces better results than domination. Always. He gestured around the room. Look at this university. Look at what we can accomplish when different species work together. Clix's energy manipulation techniques, combined with Thorn's crystalline processing power. Plus Veltar's hive mind coordination. Abilities together, you guys are solving problems that no single species could handle alone. Clix's energy form pulsed with what might have been pride. Humans figured out that diversity makes us stronger, Marcus continued. Different perspectives, different solutions, different approaches to problems. Why would we want to eliminate that? Why would we want to live in a galaxy where everything thinks and acts like humans do? He pulled out his holographic display and called up a series of images. The auditorium gasped as they saw human cities integrated with alien architecture. Human scientists working alongside beings from across the galaxy. Human diplomats facilitating peace agreements between species that had been at war for centuries. This is what humans do now, Marcus explained. We explore, we learn, we help. We've become ... double quotes. He searched for the right word. Gardeners, I guess. We help things grow. A student from the back row raised a tentacle. But what about your military capabilities? Surely humans maintain armies for conquest. Marcus nodded. Absolutely. Humans have extensive military capabilities, but we use them for protection, not conquest. Protection of trade routes, protection of weaker species from aggressive ones. Protection of developing civilizations from exploitation. He called up more images. Human peacekeeping forces intervening in conflicts. Human rescue ships responding to natural disasters. Human medical teams providing aid during pandemic outbreaks. You see, when you become the apex predator, you become responsible for everything else. It's not enough to just survive anymore. You have to make sure everything else can survive too. Dr. Krex, who had been taking furious notes, raised one of his heads. But surely this is a recent development. This cooperative behavior. Marcus shook his head. Not really. Humans have been moving in this direction for thousands of years. We domesticated wolves instead of killing them. We developed agriculture instead of just hunting everything to extinction. We built cities where different tribes could live together peacefully. He paused, his expression growing more thoughtful. I think it started when we realized that we were lonely. Humans are social creatures. We need community, cooperation, shared experiences. A galaxy where humans were the only intelligent species would be ... empty, boring, sad. The word lonely seemed to resonate with many of the alien students. Several species in the auditorium were themselves highly social, understanding the deep need for community and connection. Plus, Marcus added with a slight smile, "You guys are amazing. Seriously, the things I've learned here. The problems we've solved together, the perspectives I've gained, I could never have achieved any of that alone." He looked around the room, making eye contact with as many beings as possible. That's why humans explore space, not to conquer, but to learn, not to dominate, but to participate. We want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. Neela, the young atmospheric being, tentatively raised a gaseous appendage. But how do we know? How do we know you won't change your minds? How do we know humans won't decide cooperation isn't working and go back to conquest? It was the question everyone had been afraid to ask. Marcus considered it carefully before responding. "You don't," he said honestly. "Can't know for certain what any species will do in the future, but I can tell you why I don't think humans will go back to conquest." He gestured toward his holographic display, which now showed images of Earth, vast wilderness preserves, thriving cities integrated with natural ecosystems and the diverse wildlife that had been brought back from the brink of extinction. Because we've seen what the alternative looks like, and we don't want to go back. We've experienced the loneliness of dominance, and we've discovered the richness of cooperation. We've learned that being the strongest doesn't make you the happiest. Marcus looked directly at Dr. Vex. "Professor, You asked me once why humans don't just conquer the galaxy. The answer is simple. We've tried being conquerors, and it almost destroyed us. We'd rather be gardeners. The auditorium sat in contemplative silence as beings from across the galaxy processed this information. The fear was still there, but it was beginning to be replaced by something else. Understanding. Perhaps, or at least the possibility of understanding. Dr. Vex stepped forward. Mr. Chen, what you're describing represents an unprecedented evolutionary leap. Most apex predator species either destroy themselves or everything around them. You're suggesting that humans have moved beyond predation entirely, not beyond it. Marcus corrected. We still have those capabilities, and sometimes we need them. But we've learned to choose when and how to use them. We've learned that being able to destroy something gives you the power to protect it instead. He paused, then added, and we've learned that protecting things is more interesting than destroying them. Veltar's compound voice spoke up, carrying the collective curiosity of their entire hive mind. What do you mean by more interesting? Marcus's face lit up. Well, think about it. If you destroy something, that's it. It's gone. The story's over. But if you protect it, help it grow, learn from it, the story continues. It gets more complex, more beautiful, more surprising. He gestured around the auditorium, like this. Conversation. If humans had conquered the galaxy, I'd never have met any of you. I'd never have learned about crystalline information processing, or energy form consciousness, or hive mind coordination. The universe would be simpler, but it would also be ... less. The word hung in the air as beings throughout the auditorium considered its implications. Clix's energy form pulsed thoughtfully. So humans chose complexity over simplicity, cooperation over domination. Exactly, Marcus said, because complexity is more fun. Cooperation produces better results, and domination is ultimately self-defeating. Dr. Vex found herself nodding. It explains human involvement in galactic affairs. Your species consistently supports diversity, encourages cooperation between different civilizations, and intervenes, only to prevent one species from dominating others. Right, Marcus agreed. We've been where these aggressive species are trying to go, and we can tell them from experience that it's a dead end. Literally. You can't build a sustainable civilization on conquest. The tension in the auditorium had noticeably decreased. Students were sitting more relaxed, leaning forward with curiosity rather than back with fear. Zixtel, who had started the whole panic, slowly raised a claw. Marcus, if what you're saying is true, then humans aren't a threat to the galactic community. You're its protectors. Marcus scratched his head, which the assembled aliens had learned was his gesture for thinking. I wouldn't say protectors exactly, more like participants who happen to be really good at handling bullies. He looked around the room one more time. Look, I can't speak for all of humanity, but I can tell you that every human I know who's involved in space exploration is here for the same reason I am. Because we're curious. Because we want to learn. Because we want to be part of something amazing. Marcus picked up his coffee, apparently preparing to leave. Besides, he added with a grin, why would we want to conquer you guys? You're way more interesting as friends than you would be as subjects. As Marcus headed for the exit, the auditorium buzzed with excited conversations. The fear hadn't completely disappeared. It had been replaced by something much more valuable. Understanding. Dr. Vex watched him go, then addressed the assembly. I think we've learned something important today. Apex predator status doesn't necessarily correlate with aggressive intentions. In humanity's case, it seems to have produced the opposite effect, a species so confident in its own survival that it can afford to be generous with others. As the beings filed out of the auditorium, the conversations continued. Word of the assembly would spread throughout the galaxy, carrying with it a new understanding of humanity's role in the cosmic community. Marcus Chen, the human who had accidentally terrified an entire university by casually discussing his childhood neighbors, had become something he never expected to be, an ambassador for his species. Evolution from apex predators to apex gardeners. And in the grand story of galactic civilization, That transformation would be remembered as the moment when the most dangerous species in known space chose to become its most devoted protectors. The galaxy was safer, more diverse, and infinitely more interesting because humanity had learned the most important lesson any apex predator could learn. True power lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the choice to create, protect, and nurture. In the end, they called them apex predators, but the humans just called themselves neighbors. And that perhaps made all the difference in the universe.